Hi, everyone. Welcome to another installment of LMI Quick Thoughts. I am very happy to have Kristen Cheman, Vice President of Digital Analytic Solutions here at LMI. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So let's jump right in. The title of this is why you can't sprinkle AI as an AI strategy. Briefly, what is artificial intelligence and how does it differ from machine learning? We always hear folks when they talk about these technology sets go AI ML very quickly. It rolls off the tongue, but I think it's worth pausing and just spending a few minutes trying to understand exactly what it means to be talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yes, two overused and sometimes misused buzzwords. We might be opening a can of worms here, but I'll give it a shot and share my perspective on the difference and the nuance, and we can see what others think in the comments. I would call AI a learned simulation of human intelligence applied within a machine. So, think about Siri on your iPhone. That's a personal assistant who's running within your iPhone, answering questions just like a person might. Or Alexa, who can turn up the volume or change the station on Spotify for you. Or Tesla, a self-driving car that knows to slow down when the car in front of them gets too close, just like a person would brake in a natural situation. Machine learning, on the other hand, is a model or an algorithm. It's math that learns to provide more accurate results over time as you train it and feed it more data. And we can use the Tesla example to notice the nuances there. So, for example, you might have a machine learning algorithm that identifies a crosswalk, or you could have a separate one that identifies traffic lights, or a third one that can pick out the color on the traffic light. And those are all independently interesting, but if you put them all together and can use them in a way that tells a car, a Tesla, how to slow down and when to slow down, that's when you start to approach AI versus ML. So there's this element of sort of intelligent thinking or behavior to AI that's not true for machine learning models that run independently on their own.
That makes a lot of sense and is actually one of the better ways I've heard it distinguished and clarified. So thank you for that. As federal leaders are thinking about how to solve some of their largest challenges, we know that they are increasingly looking to AI as a tool to help them. What are some of the things that federal agency leaders should be thinking about in terms of what AI can and can't do? Essentially, doing a little bit of myth busting when it comes to AI.
Yeah, sure. So right now there's this interesting phenomena going on where we see digital IQ increasing across organizations on one hand. For example, at LMI, we have every single employee taking digital enablement training so that we can, across our entire company, have a common vocabulary around IT and analytics and can thus better identify digital solutions to problems. So you have increasing digital IQ. And then on the other hand, you have software that is becoming more and more low code, meaning you don't have to be a software developer to use it. In parallel to that, more organizations have data science teams. They are adopting the cloud. So what's happening is the gap is closing on what was previously unsolvable. And I'd probably start there before jumping to AI in terms of, can I use what I have today to solve a problem rather than jumping right to building an AI model to fix it? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as you ask some of your other questions.
That's great. Yeah. So jumping a little bit further then, what are some of the keys to a successful AI integration as leaders are thinking about the problems they need to solve, the tools that they have to solve them? They are considering incorporating AI as one of those tools. What are some keys to a successful integration of AI into that suite of tools to solve those problems?
So to sort of build off of my last point, before jumping right into AI, I think it's important to isolate what the problem actually is and start with the end in mind. So that's maybe my first key is think about the questions that you ultimately want to be able to answer. And it's obvious that if you're asking questions about what happened in the past, it's not going to help you make predictions about or plan strategically for the future. And these questions that you ultimately want to be able to answer, whether it's with AI, machine learning, or whatever, need to be measured and prioritized against people, process, and technology. And I'll dive a little deeper into each one of them. So from a technology perspective, you need to think about what can I accomplish? What is feasible with my current tech stack and data? From a process perspective, how mature is the organization that you're working in? Some organizations are afraid that AI is going to replace human jobs, and others might be concerned about the ethics and the bias involved in using AI. So there might be a cultural barrier at play that you have to get past, that you have to address first before thinking about the solution and whether AI is one of them. And then lastly, people. What is your capacity to build and, importantly, maintain AI models? Do you have a data science team? Maybe that team is super strong technically, but do they have the right functional awareness to recognize when a model isn't working the way it's supposed to, and why that is, and what to do about it? I think that's one of my favorite things about LMI is that we have this fantastic technical team that I have the privilege to lead. And then the whole rest of our company, the whole rest of our organization is functional SMEs in different domain areas: finance, science and technology, human resources, logistics. And we put those two skill sets together on teams so that I, as an analyst or a data scientist, have someone who can help me make sense of the data that I'm working with. And I have someone who I can partner with to validate that the models that I'm building make sense. But not every organization has that functionality, and it may be a limiter in using AI to solve a problem ultimately.
That's really interesting. I'm also curious. When you talk about getting data ready for AI, we've heard that in a number of other fora that agencies are really looking at their data architectures and how they generate data from an end user perspective. We talked a week ago or so about digital transformation and how organizations culturally have to transform how they think about data generation from a people perspective. So it was really interesting to hear you talk about the people aspect of what we commonly associate as a highly technical, almost people-less process and people-less technology. I'm curious what you see as the stumbling blocks for implementing AI at the agency level. What are some either mistakes or roadblocks that you think agencies are currently facing as they try to incorporate this technology into their problem-solving tool set?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll group this in with your previous question as well. One of the keys to success, and it's a bit trite because I think many organizations are tackling this problem right now, but one stumbling block is getting your data ready for AI. Many organizations are thinking about how to get data off of laptops, out of silos, integrating and centralizing it so it's easy to find. They're implementing processes to measure and improve data quality, recognizing that AI models are only as good as the data on which they're built. So that's probably an easy and obvious answer. Let me maybe try to get a little more creative. From my perspective, I think some other stumbling blocks might be recognizing that AI development is not a point in time analysis like building a chart is. Build a chart, one and done, or regression analysis, fit a curve and you can go home for the day and tackle the next problem the next day. AI development really requires patience and trial and error and maintenance over time. It is truly as much of an art as it is a science. And I think that organizations, as they adopt AI, need to also think about, what are you going to do with it in a year or 5 years or 10 years? And what happens when you have 20 models running in production? How will you know when they're not working the way that they should be? And what business processes do you need around AI-based solutions to make sure they're working the way that they should? So to log and audit models so that what parameters were used with a model 3 years ago when you made it to use a decision, or to detect bias within the model. LMI is investing in a test and evaluation capability specifically for AI to help tackle some of these problems that I'm super excited about. Maybe that's a conversation for another time. I'd love to dive deeper into that. Another stumbling block, a good data scientist can build a model that can make predictions, and maybe it's incredibly accurate, but are you trying to apply that model to a business process that maybe it's the underlying policy and process that's not working the way it should? So let me give an example there. Suppose I have to log into 6 different systems to grab data and perform an analysis. And I recognize the duplicity in that and the wasted time and having to go through all of those systems. Sure, I could build a bot to automate that process and save people time, but is the real problem, is the root cause needing to integrate the data? And I think it's important to stop and ask that question before you just build a bot or sprinkle AI on top. It's not always the answer. As much as, I'm a data scientist by background, as much as I'd always love to build a model to fix a problem, it's not always the necessary thing to do. And then the last stumbling block that I'd point to is knowing how to fail and learn from failures in a reasonable time frame. You could come up with a brilliant idea and build an AI model around it and find that it achieves half or 8 out of 10 of the requirements. How do you know if you should stop there? I think that not being able to solve a problem with AI is sometimes just as valuable as being able to solve it. And so the steps there are: identify the root cause. Is it technically infeasible? Or maybe I just don't have the right data right now to build the model, or maybe I don't have the right tech stack or environment. And I think you need to look at the business value of what you're trying to achieve. And is it greater than the costs of the change that are necessary to make it feasible? And that can help make your decision around whether to use AI in the first place, or whether to fail fast and move on to the next thing, or implement changes so that AI becomes more feasible.
Those are some really great insights. Thank you. I know we're approaching the end of our time. I always like to leave people with a takeaway if I can from these conversations. So, if you had to succinctly summarize 3 key takeaways when it comes to building a holistic AI strategy, what would those be?
I think a lot of organizations right now, whether it be in the defense space or the intelligence space, or maybe in the health and civilian markets, they're thinking about their enterprise data strategies. And I think while they're doing that, it's a really good opportunity to also position themselves for using AI through that data strategy. So 3 takeaways. First one, I'll state the obvious: make sure your data is ready for AI. Can people find it, access it, and is it of the right quality to trust it to build AI models around it? Second takeaway, consider what data you are not collecting today that you might. And is there an opportunity to partner with another agency or organization that is collecting that data today? And then last one, don't just think about data living in databases and Excel spreadsheets. Unstructured data, these are drawings and images, requirements documents, resume. These are all valuable sources of information for things like object detection or natural language processing that you might want to leverage down the road. So consider, as you're developing your enterprise data strategy, managing those unstructured assets alongside of your structured ones as part of your broader strategy. And this can help set you up for success with AI in the long run.
I hadn't even thought about resumes as as a data source, but that's a fantastic point, and I think a great place for us to stop. Kristen, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you all for listening. Looking forward to the next one.
Great. And we are going to continue to do these on a regular basis. So look out for our next installment on LMI's LinkedIn page. All right, everyone, have a great weekend.